when you begin to explore, right? When you begin to have curiosity. In fact, that's one of the things I'll tell my daughter Cameron. I say curiosity is the best cure against uncertainties, fear, right? So you talk about the exploring, then from that exploring, you begin to do learning. You could begin to learn, and with that learning, you learn. That's sort of the pathway to acceptance, to forgiveness, right? A very essential piece, leading to the exploring leads to the awareness, the learning, you begin to reflect. And then I like the separation about becoming and then being. Now you are in that stage, right?
Hello, everybody. We are excited to be on another episode of the ORCHID Diaries, where we, myself, Angel Orengo, and
Rocio Aquino,
the co-authors of the book, The Orchid, The Secret Code of Modern Goddesses, sit down with readers of the book to hear about their experience reading The Orchid. And today it is my pleasure to introduce a very long-time friend, Kwong T. And Kwong and I know each other from high school. So that's a few years ago. Kwong, how are you today?
Great. Thank you so much. Doing very well. How about you?
We are excited to have you here.
I feel so lucky that you are here with us today to have this amazing conversation. So tell us, Kwong, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Kwong?
Well, as Angel said, we went to high school together. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. My family had immigrated from Hong Kong back in 1978. So we came and joined my grandfather, who came about 40 years earlier, like many of the Chinese from southern China. After high school, I was in the military. Then I went to college, pursue degrees in history and political science, thinking about doing law school. But then I ended up, one thing led to another, I ended up doing some nonprofit work for an organization in New York City that worked with a lot of immigrant workers. And then I joined a company and we were building movie studios in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. But then, at the time I was living in Tribeca, New York, and September 11 happened. So that shifted my career. I ended up doing a lot of work with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. A lot of people know that as FEMA. And I was there for about 6-7 years. And then I joined a private firm and continued to consult. I moved down here to Washington, D.C. And I was in last October, I kind of, I guess, into my first retirement. So
thank you for sharing that, Kwong. How exciting to have you here. Tell us, how did The Orchid, The Secret Code of Modern Goddesses, come to your attention?
When we met up again last year, I learned from you that you have written a book, you and your wife. And I just say, wow, that's exciting. And so I say, I'd love to get a copy of it. Since then, actually, I got multiple copies. I got a couple hard copies for relatives. First time I read your book, I actually did it on an audio book because I was in Hong Kong. So it was easy that way. But since then, I also got a hard copy. In fact, before this podcast, I actually went back to, because I read your book last year around November, December. So then I got the hard copy, so I could go through it and make some marks and so forth. Make some notes. You can't quite do that on the audiobook as easily.
I agree. You are not the first person who tells us the same. What was your experience with the book in audio?
Oh, I liked it very much. I think you have a very good reader, and she did a very good job in kind of bring you into, I say, right into the scenes, put it this way. But what I found interesting too is that when I read the book, now I'm reading it kind of, read the words, read the flow. And in another way, I also enjoyed it very much because I like the way, the process, very concise sentences that kept it moving. And I'd also find myself back and forth between the maps and so I could see how far the people, so I could figure out, okay, they say they're going to the observatory, or they're going to the mirror rooms, or the nest room or the cave room. So this way I could kind of follow it. Give you guys a lot of credit. I don't know how much time you spend to kind of come up with what the orchid should look like and what should be in it, but quite extensive and impressive.
Thank you so much. Tell me, Kwong, what what do you remember that the book give you for your current life?
I think if I remember correct, I think earlier in your book, you talk about these sort of steps, right? You got that very sort of instinctual survival mode of living, right? Where you are constant in a constant survival, you're constantly living with fear and threat. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us are kind of put in that kind of rat race. But I thought what was great after that is that you talk about when you begin to explore, right? When you begin to have curiosity. And in fact, that's one of the things I'll tell my daughter. I say curiosity is the best cure against uncertainties, fear, right? So you talk about the exploring. Then from that exploring, you begin to do learning. And with that learning, you learn pathway to acceptance, to forgiveness. The awareness, you begin to reflect. And then I like the separation about becoming and then being. So that certainly resonated with me because for me, I think it takes a long time to kind of become self-aware, of not just aware of things around you, but also aware, kind of within yourself. The things that I think your portion of your book talk about, realizing that your own belief system, how you perceive things is often prescribed by other people. And that creates a lot of conflict. And I thought that's is one of the important things to learn in life, whether you are going through schools, the conversation I have with my own daughter about, the importance of sort of that self-discovery. But also I think the key part of the book too about, I think you saw emphasis on that forgiveness. If I remember correct, one of the title chapters is like letting it go, right? Letting go of things that are holding you back, but also that ability to forgive. And I think that's something that sometimes you see in religions, right? I think what does the Bible say? To say, turn your other cheek, or forgive even your own, love, not only forgive, like even love your enemy. That's a pretty tall order. But I think, but that comes with liberation, right? I think you use, some of the characters talk about freedom, right? So once you get to that stage, you begin to be free and live more in happiness, in peace, and creatively. You have a purpose, essentially. You begin to put it all together. So I thought, it's very good wisdom to share. And it's also interesting to see how Jennifer, Nicole, Stephanie, how they go through their life, and then Sophia, right? To go through those stages, Olivia, and then come to terms with it. So yeah, I thought that was very, very well done. Thank you for introducing me to the book.
Kwong, I'm going to tell you the reason why we do this podcast is because at some point we said, look, we can continue saying what we're saying in our words, but I think viewers and listeners will benefit so much from listening to other people speak about their experience. And I'm saying this because I want to thank you for your words and the eloquence with which you've explained that aspect of the book, because you are one of the first people to actually break down that chart, the spectrum of inner growth, as we kind of explain what we were trying to say and how we were feeling and the experience that we had. And it was so eloquently explained, and it's just wonderful. So I want to thank you for that. It's fantastic.
But thank you for sharing. I mean, first of all, thank you for. I don't know how long it took you to put the book together. How many edits you went through? How much feedback you gotta get? Because I mean, I've written a book, but I remember writing shorter papers for school and the kind of pain you go through, right, as you write, and so it took a tremendous effort to do it.
Thank you. The answer, real quick, the answer is it took us about 2 years when the moment that we sat down to write it and put it together with a lot of help from other people. But the other answer is, Huang, and I think, we're contemporary of the same age. It took me 57 years, and Rocio, it took her, 53 years to put this together. Sometimes books like this one are really a life's work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that's what's there.
Tell me, how was for you to have a pink book in your hands and read about women?
Doesn't bother me. I think I know what you mean, right? Because in fact, when I gave one of the hard copy to someone that we both know, first thing he say was he went through and say, "Oh, this is like a woman's book." I said, "No, it's women's characters, but all those lessons is applicable, right? And
Yes.
so, well, I mean, I was just in a coffee shop. At that time, I go to coffee shops to work. I jokingly tell people that I know every coffee shop's within 25 miles of my house. You know, what time they open and close. I go there, go and read it. And if someone asks, "Oh, what are you reading?" In fact, a couple of people did too, and so I show it to them and say, you know, a book written by good friends of mine. I think it's very good. You should look into it.
How was for you to read about women?
I actually did. I appreciate it quite a bit. I mean, I grew up with, you know, I think basically my mother raised us. My father was around, but he was not a kind of guy that you want to, you know, that's why in some way when Olivia talked about her father, the pain he caused, I could certainly relate to that. In fact, when I was in college, there was a group of friends, almost all guys. It was called the Rent Club, RENT, because parents, but no pa.
Ah,
And these are, I would say, guys that were pretty upset with their dads who disappeared. In fact, my best man in my wedding, like his father had sort of left him one day, literally just like, I'm going to buy milk, and didn't come back. Many years later, they will reconcile. They came back together, and that was good for, you know, for the father and for my friend and the family. But a lot of my friends were, you know, upset with that, so they called themselves the Rent Club. I joined them, but I say, you know, but I wish my pop wasn't around. So I was kind of somewhat different from them. They wished, you know, that their father did not abandon them. I say, I kind of wish that he did abandon us in a way. I think it would give us some peace. Um, so I think I'd always been kind of sensitive because, you know, I saw the things that my mother had to do to raise us. And there were a lot of us. There
Yes.
was like 7 of us, you know, and she's, you know, so it's not easy. Um, but to me, I think I don't have a resistance to it in that sense, because I think from firsthand experience, and also in my household, I'm outnumbered. You know, it's my wife, my daughter. So I think Angel is the same situation, right, in that sense. So you learn to sort of look at things from a different perspective.
And now you can see the other perspective.
Yeah, and I think now that you see the perspectives, and look, I obviously as men, you know, living in a society that largely favor men, you know, like Chinese society, for example, favor boys. So I was the oldest grandson, the first one, the boy. You get all the attentions that way, right?
Yes.
That was, you know, and I would hear story from my mother, you know, who was the oldest daughter in the family, but she wasn't allowed to go to school because, you know, you save the resources for the boy. In fact, she would told me that, you know, she wanted to go to school, but her father would say, okay, when your brother gets to certain heights, then you could go to school. That never happened. And my mother, you know,
Yes.
who basically left China, went to Hong Kong, kind of like a stowaway when she was about 13, 14, pretty much, you know, taught herself how to read and write. And so because of that, I think I you know, I understand, you know, look, I know the privilege as men in this society have. But I also try to make sure that I'm not a subscriber to that. Is my point. You know, kind of encouraging this idea. But like I think you mentioned, I think all the women characters in the book have talked about that, right? I think Jennifer with her husband who took off, right? Brian, Olivia with her father,
Yes.
Stephanie, obviously she was raped, right? And
Yes.
so these are stuff that I think it's important that I think you know. It's not just a women issue, it's really a human issue that I think as men, in this case, sometimes we're the perpetrators of that. Then we got to really do even more. I think someone made a point, I think I remember this a few years ago, someone said, you know, don't just teach your daughters how to be safe. You know, the parents need to teach the sons. So I think that's an important thing.
Thank you so much for sharing, and how beautiful do you put it to really understand the journey of your mother, that at one point she did the best with what she has. So it's very important what you say about men, and you, like a man who you understand you were favorite for society, and now you have a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what do you think will need to happen next?
I think first of all, I'm very excited, you know, for you know, she just graduated from high school yesterday.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And she's, in fact, she gave a commencement speech yesterday, and she didn't share it with us. And I think my wife, she's got a little clips of it, but I heard her speech yesterday along with everybody else that was in the audience. I didn't know what to expect. I remember the only thing I said to her was a few days before, I say, hey, don't you need to practice a little bit, just in case? But I thought she gave a wonderful speech where, well, she admitted, in fact, she said, look, I spent many months, many nights, many days in my car going out to George Washington Parkway, which is an area near us that kind of along the Potomac River. She said she sat there, tried to write this speech. And she said, I admitted I was struggling. And not that because she didn't have anything to say, but because she wondered, does she deserve to say anything? She said, look, what advice do I have? I mean, I myself is struggling, learning, sometimes stumble, sometimes falling down. So what gives me the right to say anything? And so she sort of went on to talk about how she ultimately learned about realizing that the 4 years that allowed her to get her diploma, from day one when they walked in as freshmen, not knowing where they're going, to 4 years later, senior, but now have a little more sense of purpose, is that it took a lot of twists and turns. And that was one line she said that I thought showed a lot of insight on her part, to say there's no deadline, no due date for when you can become or be that person you want to be. So in other words, it's constant. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful statement for an 18-year-old to make. And obviously it took many months to kind of come to that. But I thought, I think, I could see the students who kind of respond to that. And she went on to say, it's okay to go fail. In fact, I think she quoted Thomas Edison's once who asked about how many mistakes you make and you're concerned. He said, look, I don't say I make 10,000 mistakes. I just say, now I figured out 10,000 ways, or maybe try to do something or not do something. And so it's this idea that in life, you are going to run into some difficulties. You are going to make some mistakes. But I guess like some of the key points that your characters are saying is how to realize that what you can control, what you can accept, and that sometimes things that are done by other people that hurt you is not your fault. I think Stephanie had that concern. Jennifer had that concern, right? Olivia too. And also realizing too, how as you grow, it's not just a matter of protection. Sometimes we say that, right? Basically, like Angel and I, we grew up in the Bronx, a tough neighborhood in those days. But sometimes I think we learn to be quote unquote streetwise, but we learn to kind of just sort of that protectiveness, right? That very guarded, sometimes even aggressive. Like Olivia talked about that. She said she became very, to a point where her fear of failure was so strong, and she demands sort of perfection from all staff that she got to a point where I think you have a line there say, the staff was happy she going on vacation because they could get a break from her, right? And she realizing that, So I think the key here is that growing is not just a matter of protection, but it's really is how to brave enough to be willing to be vulnerable. But that is how you grow. When you, I think book you talk about when you open up, you let the energy in. But on another level is when you open up, be vulnerable, you allow other people to come in and help you. And then in turn allows you to able to empathize with other people and able to help. I think that was Sophia's character, right? She learned to so guard it, but she was very successful. So she just said, "Hey, I'm doing great. I'm surviving." But also she became a character that I think her friend Monica, right? I think they want to go into business. Monica said, "I don't want to go into business with you. I love you as a friend, but you're not the kind of person I want to do business with." Because you have become the very thing in some way that I think Sophia was trying to run away from.
What great messages. Thank you. Vulnerability, empathy are powerful tools that we can use in our lives. And for you to speak the way in which you're speaking, but also to see it in your daughter, and for your daughter to be presenting that wisdom at 18. I know I have, as you know, 19 and 17-year-old daughter, we do. And the wisdom that they carry, and of course they have the wisdom of their parents, of their grandparents, and everyone that came before them. But to see it, what a privilege it is when you see an 18-year-old speaking that way. And carrying that forward and building on everything that they've received and seen and experienced before them.
Yes, no, Kwon, I'm really grateful for everything that you are telling me. It's possible to give an example of a real change that you feel you did in your life after reading the book?
I think as I was reading through the book, as you know, each of your character begin to reflect. I would say I think the character Sophia, the character Olivia, the ones that are particularly more guarded. I think I kind of connected with them in a sense because certainly sort of look at my own life, I went through the same stage. So when I read, so when I listened to the audiobook and then have the chance to kind of read it in print, I think they really, another good thing about able to read in print, I could stop it, right? The audiobook will keep playing. So this way I could kind of stop and pause and think through a little bit. It got me really kind of, thinking through and reflecting a little bit about, how I, particularly, on the topic of acceptance and forgiveness, right? So for example, I mentioned about my old man, my biological father was not someone I got on with. In fact, when he passed away, I refused to attend his funeral. I did not attend that. And when Olivia was sort of going through her letter, how upset she was with her father, I could certainly identify with her. I think I'm still struggling with it. I think it's been some years now. It's kind of more than a few, couple decades now since my father passed away, biological father, and so there's a part of me that still try to kind of reconcile that. So I think as I read the book, I could, again, I really understood. I mean, obviously in your book, you didn't get into all the detail, like all the bad thing this guy did and all that. For me and my father, it's pretty vivid. I mean, I still remember when my brother and I hid under our bed as he went on his, little, tantrum. And we learned to kind of live with that. I always joke about that the reason I could do work in a coffee shop, I think very young age, you learn to able to just focus on your schoolwork in spite of all the chaos that was going around at the home. So something I certainly make sure, my daughter doesn't have to go to that. There was another thing too that kind of interesting in the book was about how, like Olivia, for example, or Sophia, right, both try to live their life by being the person, not so much about being what they want to be, but by not being what they don't want to be. Right? They try to be the opposite, right? Like Sophia say, hey, my brother, my father, mother, they were terrible, and I'm gonna be this kind of person, not what they are. So that's certainly, for me, was for a long time a guiding principle for me. I say, hey, whatever my old man did, I would not do the same. That's the whole thing. And so, so reading the book, it certainly kind of reminded me, to kind of, I could identify with that, but also point to the fact that I think for me anyway, I certainly still have this sort of anger with my biological father, for the kind of stuff that he did, and so hopefully I'll get closer to letting it go too.
Thank you for sharing. I empathize a lot with your experience. In my case, my father was largely absent from my life, and my only experience with my dad that I can remember was 5 hours when I was 40 years old, in which we sat and exchanged words and thoughts. And it was like me meeting this man for the first time. And that was the extent of it. And because of the work that I've done in forgiveness, in acceptance, in gratitude, and also a book that I read, Kwong, that really helped us solidify a few things of those loose ends that you sometimes can't come to terms with. And it was a book called Contracts, and it speaks to the soul contracts that we sign with certain people, where we're supposed to learn certain lessons, and some people sign up for those lessons and say, I'm going to help you learn the lesson. You may not like the way I teach it to you, but I'm going to teach you. And it's funny, after all that, reading the book, one day I got a message from an uncle, his brother, that said, hey, your father passed away. And the sense that I got after that was gratitude. It was, thanking him for making me a better dad. And he didn't quite do it in a manner in which I would have hoped, but his actions led me to be what I think is an outstanding dad in the way in which I show up in the world and in the lives of my daughters. And I have to imagine those instances also had an impact in you and how you show up in your world and how you show up with your daughter and your family.
Yeah, I think in the book, you know, Olivia had a section where she wrote a letter, right? She was asked to write a letter. You know, I think one letter write about someone you love, one to someone you don't love, right? And then one about yourself. I remember kind of reading her letter twice when she basically ultimately come to some, I said, some forgiveness, or even like you say, looking at, okay, you know what, I know you're terrible, but in some way I understand you were sick, but in some way you also taught me be a better person because of what you are. I thought about that. You know, sometimes I certainly, like when Mosia asked about, hey, this book's about women, what do you think? And I always thought, to me, sometimes I see this kind of misogynistic, chauvinistic thing that's done. To me, it's not an ideology, because I saw how much pain it could cause the wives, the mothers, the daughters, you know, in that kind of family. Because I experienced it, I saw it, because I witnessed that firsthand. So to me, it was never theoretical, you know, when my old man doesn't, you know, the last one to show up to work, first one to leave, you know, come home, does nothing, you know, cause all kind of pain and trouble, abusive, verbally and physically. So to me, those were, to me, it was never a simple ideology, because I saw that in practice, in real life. So, you know, when I read that Olivia's letter, so I started saying, okay, I mean, let me, you know, and I admit it, you know, in the last, now that I'm getting older too, I think some of the anger might have subsided a little bit, but I think it's still a journey to get to that point. You know, yeah. So I guess the positive thing is that, you know, like I told my wife Shirley, I say the description of my old man will be, it's the nightmare that you will not want your daughter or sister, or definitely not your mother, to be stuck to, put it this way. So I guess in that sense, I certainly have guided me about how I need to behave to my own spouse, to my own mother, you know, obviously my daughter and so forth, and my, you know, friends who are, you know, my women friends and all.
You know, Kwong, we came for very difficult upbringings, all of us. And that's the point, to really understand that at the end, now I understand my father better, and my mother. And I put they have a difficult childhood. So probably they were these one persons having kids with that. And that's why they don't have any awareness at all with anyone, because it was not normal, right? To know about what was all the consciousness that we are having today. So imagine, my mom died when she was 48, I was 20, and she passed away because she was carrying so much pain and she didn't know how to forgive. And that's why this book came to life. Because at one point I saw her and I saw me carrying so much pain with me. And in the moment that I begin to, you know, I need to forgive, I need to let go, I don't want to carry this anymore. So in that moment, when I begin to ask the question, is how this book came to life. Because I begin to experience the liberation in my body about how important is to understand their perspective and understand my reality today. So today, they already pass away. They carry so much pain. They cause so much pain. But it's up to me how I'm going to live today. So when I discovered that, for me, was when you breathe fresh air for first time, and it's, oh my God, this is possible. So I went all in to try to find where was the pain in my body. Sometimes was in my throat because I was not able to speak my truth. And other times were in my belly, and other times were here. So because probably somebody hit me here, or So is this reconciliation that I did with me, for me, now that I was choosing to have a different life. So that dropped a lot of heavy weight that I was carrying. And that gave me the freedom to move in another direction in my life. And I think that's the point of doing all this, is for every person to begin to question themselves and say, should I want to continue to carry or not? And then is the decision. In my case, was really heavy and I need to drop it off. It's like, drop it. Of course, took time, but was possible. And now that I'm free of all that, I cannot explain how my reality has changed from a place of I have some moments of happiness to, oh my God, life can be absolutely amazing. And I have some moments of sadness. It's very simple, and this is an exercise that anyone can take. Where do you want to put your attention? Do you want to put your attention in the lack of joy, or you want to put your attention in joy? I know that out there, the news has been like this since I remember. Since I remember, it's the end of the world because somebody's going to press the button. So I was really in fear all the time because somebody's gonna press the button. So now it's like, then we're gonna die and somebody's gonna press the button. But you know what? Until then, I'm gonna focus in joy and happiness and possibilities and how can I live my life right now in the fullest. And my past was prohibiting me to enjoy my present moment. So for that reason was really important to let go. So thank you so much for sharing your situation because I can relate to. And we are not alone, Kwong. This happened to our generation. As a generation of really troubled men, really troubled situations in the families, and they didn't have any help. Nothing. If you go to help, you are crazy. That stigmatized. And it was very difficult to go out and try to explore, was really rigid. So imagine having this conversation 30 years ago, people are gonna laughing at us. But today we can have this conversation. So it's incredible how lucky we are ourselves to be in this generation that we can change. The past stays here, and from the future with my kids is gonna have another expectation. It's like a totally different. Of course, I wish I have the life of my kids, but I have this one myself right now. What I'm gonna do with this one right now?
Thank you, Rocio. How beautiful the two of you and to share those experiences. Indeed, I think you're absolutely right. We have learned a lot and we're leaving and many of us creating a better life for our children, which is what every parent wants to do. And I think when you start looking at where we come from, where we are, and where we seem to be heading through our children, that's exciting because it's happening. I want to take advantage of an opportunity to ask you a specific question. Many times people have asked us, what are the different reasons for writing this book? And one of them that has been shaping in our heads is that we believe that there are difficult challenges ahead, be it the transformation that society is going to have through artificial intelligence, be it natural disasters that seem to be happening more often. And what we say is if we can help people be equipped with more emotional intelligence, with these skills that leave them better prepared to deal with whatever is outside of them. And you, as you started earlier in our call, you've spent a career at FEMA. You've seen your share of challenges. We've spoken about some of them. There's our belief that this can help people in times of need. Makes sense. It's not often that we have someone with your expertise that has also read the book. And I was just hoping to see if you could comment on that.
Every disaster is sort of unique, right? Yes, it's always a tornado, but the impact on a community is always in some way, yes, we've seen that before, but another way is every individual case, every individual person and household is different. But what is always important is that you have a team of people that have that empathy, that are able to work together. A mentor might say, you know, hey, I know you don't like so-and-so, but if your house on fire, he's the only guy next to you. Are you going to let the fact that you don't like this person to keep you from asking the person to help? And to understanding that purpose, right? That higher purpose. Hey, our job is to help. Can we come together, work together and help them? And so I think that individual sort of emotional maturity and also that realness to kind of like go above beyond. Sometimes I think your book, there was a chapter where they talk about this sort of when they go into the stairs, right? They go to every step, they learn new things. From my experience, that sometimes I work with team people, and you don't have a choice, right? The big disaster is a big event. You can't do it by yourself. You got to put a bunch of people together. You're from all different backgrounds. You're all different level of education, ideologies, geographies, culture, racial background, whatever you could think of, right? But yet they come together. They make that leap. Sometimes I think people are able to make the leap to the higher purpose when that purpose is made clear to them and they agree. So they will jump over things and you grow from that. And it was, I think Steven Spielberg have a thing on HBO about the Band of Brothers in the Pacific, like bunch of people coming together, someone from Brooklyn, someone from here, someone is a Jew, someone is a German, whatever it might be, they got together. And so sometimes I think that goal can accelerate when that purpose is clear. I think that's part of what we try to do when we whether we're working in an organization like a FEMA or we are our own family, is that we want us and we want our children to able to have that internal strength, right? And I think that's what your book is getting, is how you build that internal strength. Sometimes I tell people, I like history not because of the facts or the big winning battle and stuff, but it's really on sort of over and over again, you saw how, unfortunately, how people do terrible things. But at the same time, you also saw in history how people come together in spite of those terrible things. Right? And that's when you make that huge leap in some way. Because in your book, a lot of the characters, in a lot of ways, were very much trapped, right? They were trapped in themselves. And sometimes I think those higher purposes, when they build that empathy, they get them out of it. That's when they become bigger, being more at peace, that freedom. And I think the whole idea is to become human. But being human means that you not only do you see the value in yourself, right? That self-awareness, that self-love, but you're also able to see that in others. And that's a big piece.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for those
Thank you
thoughts.
so much. Thank you, really. Because that gives me hope.
Yes.
And that at one point, if something happens, people, even though we are different, we can come together and resolve. So thank you so much.
Well, I believe we're coming to the end of our conversation. So I wanted to give Kwong an opportunity to perhaps speak to the audience and to maybe men out there who may be considering the book and is still not convinced that they should read it. Perhaps one last message as to why they should.
Well, I think if to be human, right, is just to grow. And if I might kind of put my daughter's line, I think what she say, there's no deadline, there's no due date about growing. It's a constant thing. And sometimes the way to learn is to put yourself in other people's shoes, right? And I think particularly for men, if they think, oh, this is a women's book, they just wall themselves up right away. I mean, you could simply substitute any words in it, right? You say, oh, this is just a book about Chinese people, so therefore I don't want to read it, that kind of thing. I think that's when you wall yourself off. And so sometimes it's almost like food. I think nowadays we're better. I remember when I was growing up, I have friends who say, "Oh, I don't go eat that," and sometimes I think that would try, just to open up. You never know. You might come across things that you never thought you're gonna like, and you say, "Oh my God!" And not only do you enjoy the diversity thing, but you begin to see the similarities of things. And I think that's the key, right? The similarities and the diversities, together that give us the strength. So I would say that I always encourage people to read, and I think this is again, I'm very grateful that you guys wrote this book and introduced me to it, and I really appreciate it. So I would encourage others to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwon. It's a pleasure to have you here with us and share all these introspections. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwong. Thanks. It's too lovely seeing you again. I know we've said it recently to each other after not seeing each other for a long, long time. It is fantastic to have you in my life again, and I'm blessed because of it. So thank you for the privilege.
I'll say likewise. We're really happy to see you doing well. I'm happy to see you have this wonderful partner of yours, Rocio, and certainly I met both your daughters. Congratulations. Thank you. I'm glad we connected after all these years.
And to you, my lovely co-host and co-author and wife and friend and lover, and thank you so much. It's a pleasure doing this with you and growing with you together as well.
I love you. Thank you.
I love you. And to everyone who is listening and watching, this has been another podcast of the ORCHID Diaries, when we sit down with amazing people who have had the opportunity of reading the book, The Orchid, The Secret Code of Modern Goddesses, and have openly, vulnerably come to share their experience with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.
Thank you.